President of Divorce Right, and we provide training for HR professionals and company supervisors, and we provide divorce coaching and case management, providing the guidance and direction that your divorcing employees so desperately need. Divorce is a huge disruptor, not only to the employee going through it, but to the company they work for. And our coaches have a very unique perspective on divorce that sets us apart. They have a deeper understanding of the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce, and they can handle even the highest conflict of cases with compassion and professionalism. Our coaches are trained to look at the entire picture for your employees and helping them make better decisions based on their goals and their expectations. So, if you're an HR benefits manager or an HR benefits provider or consultant, please reach out and see if adding our suite of solutions is a good fit for your business. And as a reminder, we have SHRM credits for SHRM members, and we'll post a link at the end of this broadcast so that you can grab those. And I want to introduce you to Paulette Rigo. She is my friend, she is my colleague, and she is an incredible certified divorce coach and mediator. And she's one of the best in the business. And she's the director of coaching here at Divorce Right. So, in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month this month, today we're going to be talking about it and its role in divorce with our very special guest, certified family law specialist and attorney, and certified divorce consultant and coach, Lisa Zonder. So let me tell you about my friend and trusted referral partner, Lisa Zonder. She's been certified by the state of California Board of Legal Specialization since 1999. She's a divorce lawyer with over 25 years of legal experience, including experience with celebrity divorces, experienced peacemaker as a mediator and collaborative divorce attorney. Lisa works with families to make divorce transitions smoother, more civil, and less costly, particularly through alternatives to the traditional divorce process, which is what we love. A courtroom advocate for many divorcing clients, Lisa has a comprehensive grasp of the numerous divorce options that are available to clients. She oversees the litigation team's strategies. Lisa helps individuals resolve conflicts out of court, although sometimes the fight for one's interest in the courtroom is necessary. And I have referred clients to her and would not hesitate to do it again. And now Lisa also sees the value that a divorce coach can bring to the table when navigating a difficult divorce. So just this past year, she added becoming a certified divorce coach to her toolkit. Her experience in the courtroom has taught her that with expert guidance and direction, a family can avoid emotionally and financially costly mistakes. So welcome, Lisa. I am so happy to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here, Vicki and Paulette.
I'm so happy to have you. So, Lisa, I'm seeing more and more attorneys become divorce coaches. I introduced you to one just this past week from Boston, just the other day that really sees the value and the process that a divorce coach can bring. And it seems to be the beginning of a trend in your field. And I'd love to know your thoughts on how that helps and how that can help our listeners, employees through the process.
Yeah, I certainly hope it is going to become a trend. Right now, I think that we are few and far between and serving more as pioneers, adding coaching into our tool bag. But, what happened for me, Vicki, is that I was giving legal advice to clients, and oftentimes women would be sitting with me. Most of my clients are women in midlife, men too. But they would sit with me and, they're going through this very emotionally overwhelming, financially overwhelming experience. And then they're not really talking a lot about the legal case, right? So here I am thinking about spewing off, like we could file this motion and we can go to court and you can file what we call an RFO in California. And I could feel like no reaction, right? I mean, they're not really excited by hearing about the legal process and what it could do for them. Although, being honest, right, it's very valid and it's necessary, right, for people to be able to get through their divorce. But then when clients start talking about their emotions and other concerns that they have, whether they can bring their voice to a mediation or how do I show up to court, right? How do I get back into the workforce? To me, the coaching just was like, it's just such a magical experience. I was actually coaching without knowing I was coaching, and I wasn't doing it the right way, of course. So I took a whole bunch of training to be able to understand how to better serve clients because I was already getting all of these issues brought to me. And I've heard some attorneys say to me, Lisa, the coaching aspect is something that we already do, right? We're counselors at law. So lawyers are already coaches. And I said, no, actually, I've just taken about 9 months worth of training in coaching, and it is a very different supportive process being a thinking partner than it is to tell somebody in a rescuing relationship what to do. But it's such a magical thing. And so people, midlife women do not need to suffer needlessly and silently at this point, where I bring coaching into the experience. It's just a whole magical, holistic approach to dealing with people going through divorce. So I'm so grateful for the coaching and having invited that into my life.
It's so exciting.
Yeah.
Paula, you want to take it from here?
Well, I was just going to say, welcome to the family. It makes me excited. The more, the merrier. I'm in the trenches all the time. I get regularly connected or contacted by family law attorneys from all over that say, can I talk to you? Can I have lunch with you? Like, I want to learn what you do. I've even had attorneys say, hey, I'd really like what you just did. Consider putting that in my toolbox or my makeup bag or whatever analogy you want to use, because it does give you a different viewpoint and an additional layer of helping your clients from, legal counsel, right? It's a totally different hat that you wear. In fact, I had an attorney reach out to me, had lunch with her on Monday in Sandy Springs, and she said, wait, what do you do? And I want to have lunch with you. So, I could rattle off a list of all the benefits that I, being a certified divorce coach benefit, but I'd love to know you and your experience now that, you've got that other hat that you wear. What do you think that the benefits are for people working with a divorce coach?
Yeah. To me, the women who are, in midlife, they're not just experiencing legal troubles, right? We experience divorce on so many different dimensions. It's not just, oh, I want to file a motion and compel discovery and get documents from the other side. It's, oh, Lisa, I'm trying to figure out, what my life mission is. I'm trying to figure out why I'm here and my purpose. I don't know, how to show up in this toxic relationship, but also be in the conference room at a negotiation table and be able to speak up for myself. And normally the lawyer would sit there and just, sort of dictate play, and this is how we're going to do it. And that's why I call it a rescuing relationship, right? We are telling, we are not asking, we're not bringing curiosity to the table. We're not the thinking partner. It's not client led. It was be attorney led in the legal world. So it's a big paradigm shift for us to be able to move into coaching. And then the client gets the benefit of having an attorney who is not only going to dictate play and tell them what motions they can file, but actually be able to support and hold their hand through, and not to just be a cheerleader, but actually to help them think creatively about, right, what they're going to do with their process and where is it worth it for them. Like, where do I hold or fold? That old song, whether to hold or fold them, whether to walk away or run, right? That's the lyric line. So a lot of people don't know, but if the attorney tells the client what to do, that might not be the right solution for the client. The client knows what's right for her. Okay. It's up to the client. The client is living her life. She has many factors. It's a multi-factored decision on her part, whether she accepts a certain settlement or not. And so we listen to the clients, we challenge their thinking, we bring in a lot of tools with us in our toolbox to be able to support a client in a way that attorneys are just not naturally, instinctively trained to work with a client. So I think it adds like a whole different dimension, and it gives us an ability to be much more holistic in our approach with the clients.
And it isn't just women, we want to clarify. We also work with men too, right? Although I know we're focusing a little bit on the domestic violence this month, as we should, October being Intimate Partner and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But you mentioned it, like improving their self-confidence and helping them make decisions that are on their terms. They don't know, they may have this feeling of, I don't know exactly what I want, but I need to uncover it and kind of peel away the layers and kind of dig. That's an exploration of clarifying their wishes and goals and developing solutions. And it's this excavation of them exploring a part of themselves that they usually didn't connect to for whatever reason, because of something in their marriage that felt like a battle. And now it's like, oh, a whole responsibility for their future that now, I hate to say it, is their responsibility, because no one's going to do it for them. So that's exciting, but it's also scary, and holding their hand and helping them figure that out together.
Yeah, to your point, it is a whole new dynamic, and it's also a whole new industry, for lack of a better word, to an industry that's never had something like this before, with that holistic support system. If I could just kind of switching gears, because in honor of Intimate Partner and Domestic Violence Awareness Month, I would like to kind of switch gears and get back to your attorney hat on for a moment. And let's talk about what you're seeing in the courtroom around domestic violence. God bless you. I know that there's some new legislation in California, Senate Bill SB 553, and how that impacts employers in the state of California. So what's going on in the courtrooms, Lisa?
Okay, so let me just say first that while my team at Zonder Family Law Group, we do handle divorce every single day, domestic violence cases can definitely be considered a subspecialty for those attorneys, the firms handling them. By no means is it our specialty, so I don't want to be, proclaiming here some expertise here. But when you and I spoke, Vicki, first off, we recognize that this is, Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But the other thing that comes up for me is like, okay, I wanted to know what in recent weeks has been happening. Are there any new developments? And so I researched, and I came up with this very interesting piece of legislation that is now up for grabs. And if it's enacted, so it's going to require virtually every employer in California to adopt a very comprehensive workplace violence prevention plan. And if it passes, it's going to be in effect starting July 1, 2024. And so this SB 553 bill, as far as I know, it's already passed the California State Assembly Appropriations Committee. I am not very keenly dialed in, so I don't want to get into too much technicality, but it looks like a prior version of this legislation was directed more toward healthcare settings. And now with these new amendments that are recently being introduced, and this is only in the last so many weeks, it's going to look a lot like Cal OSHA's draft regulations on workplace violence prevention. And so from what I understand, Cal OSHA has been working on for the last 6 years, roughly, some kind of prevention standard. And so let me just give you the highlights here, just the quick hits of what this looks like. So it would require virtually every California employer to implement a comprehensive written workplace violence prevention plan. And that's a pretty big deal because, somebody's going to have to figure out what that looks like inside the company. It also is going to ensure that this comprehensive written plan has effective procedures to accept and respond to employee workplace violence reports. Now, I mean, that's a pretty big obligation, the onus being on the employer, right, to know how to properly handle these types of reports by employees. And review the plan, record the workplace violence incidents in a log and with some details, and provide training to their employees. And there's all kind of criteria around that. Again, I don't want to get into the technical detail. This is just a highlight. And to keep their training records. And so this is just something to know that if you're an employer, this could be an obligation that you might soon be, dealing with and grappling with.
Yeah, I think that's very, very important for employers to understand what their obligations are going to be when and if this passes. And it sounds like something that would be a super valuable thing for men and women as they go through this. Yeah. Another thing that you and I talked about is how domestic violence is used as a weapon in custody matters. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Can we just back up just 1 second, Vicki? I'm sorry. I want to answer your question, but just backing up for a second, because one other thing for the employers to know is how to recognize the domestic violence when it's happening at the workplace. And so they might be looking for some physical signs, an employee coming in with bruises or injuries, having a lot of unexplained absences, being very highly clothed, even in weather when it would be warm and you wouldn't expect them to be looking that way. Some emotional distress, like you might see them getting startled easily, crying more frequently, maybe wearing sunglasses around to hide bruising or lack of sleep. Just looking at the behaviors, noticing that there's something changed. And isolation, they may be avoiding interactions in the workplace and withdrawn and isolated. So those are just things I wanted to point out because, that would be important, obviously, as an employer and HR personnel to be aware.
Another one is excessive cover-up, makeup to camouflage bruises in a very excessive manner that becomes rather obvious. Yeah, So this is such a heavy topic, and but it's so important.
I see an excessive sensitivity to loud noises or being sensitive to maybe feeling like somebody's sneaking up on them when they're not. It's just a matter of they're feeling a little bit jumpy. That kind of like anxious feeling of an abrupt change or loud noise or something, just being hypersensitive to things like that. That's something I see where they're just, even when they come to see me, they feel like they're just not just walking on eggshells, but beyond that, like walking on broken glass. It's just
unsafe.
Hypersensitivity.
Yeah, they're unsafe. They're unsafe.
Right.
So can we talk about how that this is the opposite of that, I think, but it's how it's used in custody matters.
Definitely.
Negatively.
Definitely. So I have seen cases, and I think they're increasing exponentially now, at least in the California courts in the Southern California region. I can't really comment on the Bay Area, although I've had some cases up there too, where parents of young children where custody is at issue will go ahead and affirmatively file a domestic violence restraining order request, even though some things that may have happened may have been mutual or from years and years ago, and they manufacture evidence because they're weaponizing the domestic violence restraining order process because there's a lot of benefit to doing so, right? So I see the gamesmanship in it, right? I'm not saying that people don't need restraining orders. In some instances, they're very well justified. But then there are parents who are, kind of gaming, and they will get an advantage in the custody process. There are certain presumptions in our California code that would give, parenting rights, presumptions around custody that would give protections and extra rights to the parent who gets that restraining order. And so I've seen cases where, I'll just give you like quick examples. Somebody took the cell phone from the other parent and a restraining order is granted because they grabbed it, and that was, violent. Or all of these, it doesn't need to be physical. It could be emotional abuse, right? Sexual abuse, financial abuse that's going on in a relationship. But any instance of, maybe a parent grabbed a phone because the other side was bullying them, or there was an explanation for it, and they could be facing a restraining order, right? And then suddenly it affects their kids, it affects spousal support. There are all kinds of presumptions and impacts and repercussions for having that domestic violence restraining order. So one of the things that concerns us a lot is whether the domestic violence restraining order is actually needed, or is it being used for gamesmanship and, one-upping in the courts? And I think the courts have a very difficult job trying to, sort out,
Decipher, yeah.
is this real, or is this just, and some are manufactured, and sometimes what happens is the victim, will apply for a restraining order, and the bullying perpetrator, and by the way, male and female, I've seen it both ways. I've had male clients who are abused too. It's not just
working with one now. I'm working with one now.
Are you okay? So yeah. And so, they'll make allegations that, oh, everything you say, right, you did to me and worse, right? So there is just like this lying, manipulation, sort of, manufactured, allegations. And then by the time you get to a judge, because what happens is if the judge feels like at the temporary restraining order level, like there is possibly violence here, they'll grant it just in an abundance of caution, right? It's a slight evidentiary burden. And then it takes weeks to get back into a hearing. And sometimes that 3-week out hearing gets continued further to develop witnesses and to do interviews. So it's definitely something that could be used inappropriately. Most of the time, I would hope and like to think that most people are seeking restraining orders for valid reasons. What's more concerning is the people who don't pursue restraining orders when they actually need them because they're so afraid. I have had clients who are in such mortal fear of the father or the spouse who's perpetrating the violence. Let's say it's the dad, that no one will come close to even asking for a restraining order, even with significant emotional abuse or physical abuse. And to me, that's just criminal, right? I mean, that's just a tragedy.
It is. It's become, and there's a lot of head work in there too. And you mentioned something that was really interesting, and I want to raise this awareness with everybody too. It's not just physical abuse that we're talking about here. We're also talking about financial abuse, withholding funds, withholding credit cards, right? All of that stuff. And emotional abuse as well, which is neither of those, although financial, you possibly could have a paper trail, but it's really hard when it's emotional abuse and when it's financial abuse compared to the visible signs that people accept as domestic violence.
Yeah. I've also seen a lot of just really harassing texts. Sometimes people will show up to their spouses, after separation, right? They'll show up to their apartment or their new house and just show up on the doorstep unannounced and start bullying and threatening. And, there is just so much. This is a really, it's a difficult area. And my hat's off really to all of the judges and, and their staff, and also all of the attorneys working in this area. We've become first responders. And, I just love the idea that there are some people who actually subspecialize in this. Like they just do a lot of restraining order work. It's just very heavy work. So in my firm, we try to balance, the caseload and how many we take. And the other thing that I would mention to you, Vicki and Paulette, is that, before these cases go to court for the domestic violence restraining order hearing, in California, they're asked to go to mediation. Yeah. And the mediation is a bit of a misnomer. It's a child in reporting counties and recommending counties, it's considered a child custody recommending counselor, CCRC. And they call it mediation, and you would assume you just go in and you negotiate a resolution. But in, like, for example, here locally in our Ventura courts, they make a recommendation. In LA, they don't necessarily make recommendations unless they're recommending potentially, like, to the judge, hey, go ahead and get a deeper psychological evaluation of a parent or both parents. So the mediation is mandatory. If there is domestic violence, they will have the parents meet separately with the social worker. but not all the mediators. They do have to have some sort of like marriage and family, some kind of master's degree level counseling, right? Which is good, and it's good for fundamental, like training. But I think my understanding is, and if I'm wrong, please correct me if anyone knows, but I think they're required only 16 hours in domestic violence, which to me isn't a boatload of training. And then they have to make decisions around, it's they're truth seeking, they're trying to figure out what happened. And, sometimes the victim can be perceived as the liar because they're the one hysterical and reactive, and, they appear more chaotic, right? And so they're not as sympathetic. And then this abusive, the other spouse could be a narcissist or a bully or an addict, addicted with drugs, alcohol use. And they come in and they're just like so suave and charming and credible because they're pulled together because, they aren't experiencing the violence. They're handing it out, right? And so, and the mediators sometimes can't tell. And so what a tough job it is to really discern, who's the perpetrator and who's the victim. And sometimes they get it backwards.
Yeah.
It's really a shame, and it's this is a very tough, a tough issue. How much training do they have with power imbalances? That's also a question.
Oh gosh, yes. That's I know we're coming up on the end of this. So I know you've provided some resources that you use in the California area. Why don't you tell us about those? And I will also put just a reminder, we do have SHRM credits for our listeners that are members of SHRM. So we will post that after that. But talk about a couple of resources for California. And as I was researching these sites, I found that they offer some really invaluable information for others. So where do you want to start first?
So you have hbcfl.org, which is Harriet Buhey Center for Family Law. And they are in Los Angeles, and they assist low income and self-represented litigants. They're a great resource. A lot of attorneys volunteer their time in the LA area to help out. And so that's a great resource. You also have Levitt and Quinn. They are on Beverly Boulevard in LA. They do charge an intake fee, but then they offer sliding scale fees based on clients' income, and they offer services there as well. There is the Domestic Violence Project at the LA Superior Court, which does actually help. I don't know if we listed that one, but
we do, but I'll put that up. What was it again? It was the what?
It's the Domestic Violence Project at the Superior Court, and that assists clients in obtaining temporary restraining orders. And then there's always the family court facilitators. So they have in LA courts, like in almost every court, a family law facilitator that helps with the child and spousal support and other issues that need to get sorted out in the context of these domestic violence cases. It's the Superior Court, not the
Superior. Oh, I apologize.
I rattled that off quickly. I apologize.
That was probably me. So we'll just everybody up there just
not the Supreme Court. Yeah,
the Superior Court. LA Superior Court.
It was my bad.
No worries at all. And then there is the Family Court Services at LA, which is like where the mediation takes place. And they assist with child support and spousal support. And there is a 211 information line at the LA Superior Court, which actually offers information to 4,500 services in LA County. So that could be a great resources. And then there are various, like, of course, child abuse hotlines, elder abuse hotlines, domestic violence hotlines. And in LA, there is a 24-hour hotline for battered women, and the number is 818-887-6589. So lots of amazing resources out there, and I hope everyone stays safe.
Yes, thank you so much. This has really been so informative, and I am going to put up our SHRM credits for our SHRM members. It's really important if you are in California, and I'm going to hope that something like this bill becomes available throughout the country. So it's really important for HR managers to kind of keep your nose to the grindstone, your ears out, and reach out to us for more information as these bills pass, because I think it's really important to provide that information and even provide training around that process. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, I hope that you will join us next week. We have Sarah Zabel. She is a former family law judge from Miami-Dade County in Florida. And she's going to be talking about a view from the bench, what she sees, and how you can support your employees so that they don't make the mistakes that she saw on a regular basis. So join us next week. We look forward to bringing you more information about how you can support your employees through such a traumatic and disruptive experience, not just at their home, but at their workplace as well. Lisa, thank you so much. Paulette, thank you again. I will see you next week. And thank you all for listening. And we look forward to supporting you more in the coming weeks. Thank you so much, everybody, and have a great week. Bye-bye for now.